Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Raymond. When my stepdaughter, whom I've raised for most of her life, sent me an email telling me not to come to her wedding, a few days before her wedding. She claimed I treated her badly when she was staying under my roof, and I have no place in her special day. Reading her email broke my heart, but I knew what to do. My stepdaughter wasn't prepared for what came after that email. Stick with me as I take you through how it all unfolded. I met Victoria, my stepdaughter's mother, many years ago, and it didn't take long for me to realize she was different. She had a charm about her that was hard to resist. From the moment we started talking, there was a connection. Victoria was a widow when I met her. She had lost her husband in a car accident, something that hit her hard, of course. But she was focused on raising her daughter on her own. At first, I wasn't sure if I could handle the idea of becoming a stepfather. It was hard for me to wrap my head around. I had heard stories about people who stepped into that role only to end up rejected by their stepchildren. I wasn't blind to the challenges that came with raising someone else's child. How could I step into that role and be a real father figure to her? But after thinking it through for a while, I realized that the only way forward was to try. Sure, there were risks, and yes, it might not be easy, but I was in love with her mother, Victoria, and I couldn't just walk away from that. So, after careful thought, I decided to marry Victoria. I knew it wouldn't be perfect. There would be bumps along the way, but I figured it was a fair compromise. I also had a son from a previous marriage. He was a bit older than Victoria's daughter, and he lived with his mom, but he came to visit me regularly. I could see how important it was for Victoria to accept him, just as I saw the importance of accepting her daughter. I knew it would take time, and it wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready for that challenge. When I married Victoria, I welcomed her daughter, too. But being a stepfather, especially to a teenage girl, is no small task. I'll be the first to admit, it was hard. Adolescence is a tough time for any kid, let alone when you're trying to figure out where you fit in, who you are, and how to deal with all the changes your body and mind are going through. You see, she was at that age where rebellion and uncertainty start to take shape. She was trying to make sense of her world, and that often came across as anger or avoidance. I remember the early days. I could feel the tension every time I tried to talk to her. She didn't want a new dad. She wanted her life to stay the same, and I was part of the reason things were changing. Victoria tried to explain to her why we were getting married, why they were moving into my home, but no matter how many times she said it, it didn't change how her daughter felt. I was a stranger to her, and in her eyes, I was the guy who was coming in and replacing her father, even though I wasn't trying to do that at all. I knew being a stepfather wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew I had a responsibility here. I was married to Victoria, and that meant her daughter was part of my life now, whether it was easy or not. I had to keep showing up, even when things weren't going the way I hoped. It didn't matter how much she pushed me away, I wasn't going anywhere. I started with small things that might show I was trying to be a positive influence. I would buy her things she might like or need. I wanted to show her that I cared, that I was trying to be a part of her life. I took one of the spare rooms in the house and made it hers. I asked her about the kind of design she wanted, what color she liked, and what kind of furniture she imagined. I made it a space that was hers and hers alone. When I finished, she didn't say much at first, but I heard from her mother that she loved it. She didn't suddenly become my daughter overnight, but I had hope. I saw that I could make a difference in her life as the kind of father figure she needed, even if she wasn't ready to see it yet. Years later, my stepdaughter was accepted into one of the best colleges around, and it was a huge moment for me. This was proof that, despite all the struggles, she was on the right track, and it filled me with pride. She had always been stubborn, no doubt about it. And as much as I tried to guide her, I knew I'd never win her over with grand gestures or forced affection. But seeing her getting into one of the best colleges made me feel happy. She had earned it on her own, and I couldn't have been prouder. I didn't want her to face the same financial strain that so many college students do, worrying about how to pay for their education, accumulating debt right from the start. So, I made a decision. I covered all of her fees. I figured that if I could relieve her of that burden, She could focus entirely on her education without constantly worrying about finances. Victoria, her mother, was thankful. She didn't have to worry about her daughter's education anymore, and it meant the world to her that I was willing to step in and do this. To me, it wasn't a big deal. It was just what needed to be done. I would have done it for any of my children, and that's how I saw her. I made sure my stepdaughter had everything she needed to feel comfortable. I sent her stipends regularly to make sure she didn't have to ask for money whenever something came up. And though she never called me directly for anything, I always found out what she needed through her mother. I didn't need her to say thank you. I just wanted her to know I was there for her, no matter what. I kept telling myself that our relationship was evolving slowly but surely. Maybe one day she would understand everything I was doing for her. Maybe she wouldn't, but either way, I was there for her. I always had been. As my stepdaughter neared her final year in college, I overheard her talking to her mother about her plans to get married. She'd been with her boyfriend for years, and I was happy for her. I was glad to see her moving forward with her life, and I truly supported her decision. I had watched her grow over the years, and while our relationship wasn't perfect, I knew that she was making a big step into adulthood. Getting married, to me, seemed like a good thing. She had found someone whom she seemed to love and trust, and I couldn't help but feel proud. But there was something a little unsettling that came with all of this. When the day of her graduation arrived, I was excited, like any father would be. But then came her request. She wanted only her mother there. At first, it threw me off. I'd been there for her in a lot of ways, helping with school, trying to be a father figure in her life, and yet she didn't want me there for such a significant milestone. I didn't take it personally, though. I could understand. She was probably trying to avoid any awkwardness. I didn't dwell on it, but it did give me pause. When the engagement became official, Victoria encouraged her daughter to bring her fiance to our house for dinner. This was the moment when I really got a chance to size up the man who would soon be part of the family. I was genuinely curious. I wanted to see what he was like, how he treated my stepdaughter, and if he was serious about their future together. The dinner went well. The fiancé seemed well put together. We shared stories, laughed a little, and overall, the evening felt pretty comfortable. But as the evening wrapped up, I knew I needed to have a conversation with him. This was about making sure his intentions were clear and that he was truly ready for the responsibility that came with marriage. So, after dinner, I asked him to step aside. We went to a quieter part of the house, and I asked him the questions any father would ask a man about to marry his daughter. What are your plans for her? What kind of future do you see? Are you prepared for the challenges that come with marriage? These were questions meant to gauge his level of maturity and seriousness. I could see that he took the conversation seriously. He answered thoughtfully, and his responses reassured me that he was, in fact, a good match for my stepdaughter. He seemed like a solid guy, but I knew that starting out on a good footing meant more than just having good intentions. It also meant being supported. I recognized that he had just graduated from college, and like many young couples, the financial side of things could be a struggle. So, after our talk, I offered him some help. I told him I'd be happy to support him as he began this next chapter with my stepdaughter. I could tell he appreciated it, though he didn't ask for anything directly. I just wanted to make sure he felt that he wasn't alone in this new life he was starting. As the wedding preparations continued, I remained involved, quietly helping behind the scenes. The fiancé was still figuring out the logistics of paying for everything. Weddings are expensive, and I knew they were facing challenges with things like the venue and other wedding-related costs. I didn't hesitate when I saw an opportunity to help. Victoria came to me asking for financial assistance, and I provided it without a second thought. I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly for my stepdaughter. She deserved to have the wedding of her dreams, and I wasn't going to let money stand in the way. I just wanted to be there for her, just as any father would. But the more I helped, the more I realized how much I was doing. I was organizing things, providing funds, handling arrangements in the background, and doing it all quietly. It didn't feel like much at the time, but looking back, I see how much I was invested in making sure their future started off on the right foot. I didn't want any financial or logistical hiccups to get in the way of what should have been a happy time. It felt good to be part of their lives like this, helping where I could, offering advice when needed, and doing what I thought was right for the family. Even though my stepdaughter and I had our differences over the years, this was my way of showing her that I was there for her, no matter what. One of the first things I noticed was that her fiance was having trouble with his credit score, making it hard for them to get the kind of loan they needed for their future home. I knew I could help, so without hesitation, I offered to co-sign their loan. I believed them, and I wanted them to have a strong start. I wanted to make sure that they didn't have to stress about money at the beginning of their life together. Then there was the car. My stepdaughter had always talked about how much she wanted a nice family car that's reliable and spacious enough for their growing family. I knew how much it meant to her, and I decided that I would surprise them with it. Only her mother, Victoria, knew about the surprise, and I was excited to see my stepdaughter's reaction. Everything I was doing felt worthwhile. Every bit of money I spent, every effort I put into making sure their wedding day went smoothly, was for family. I wanted to make sure my stepdaughter had the kind of day she could look back on and remember with happiness, not with worry about bills or last-minute problems. This was my way of showing her that I cared, that I was here for her, and that I wasn't going to leave her hanging. I was doing it because I believed in them. I wanted them to have the best start possible, and I wanted to make sure they had a solid foundation to build their future. 3 days before the wedding, I was sitting at my desk one evening, sorting through work emails, when an email from my stepdaughter caught my attention. I paused for a moment, wondering why she was emailing me. With how close we lived and how often we were in contact, it seemed odd that she wouldn't just pick up the phone or even come over to talk if she had something important to say. But I opened it anyway, not knowing that this email would completely change everything. As I read through the email, my heart sank with each word. She told me bluntly that she didn't want me at her wedding. She went on to explain that she was holding on to grudges from when she was 17, and apparently I had treated her badly during those years. Specifically, she accused me of not buying her the car she wanted for her birthday, and said I was too controlling. She didn't go into much detail about what that control meant, but she made it clear that my actions had hurt her, and she hadn't forgotten. I was completely blindsided. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to cover it. I had been patient with her struggles and tried to create a relationship, even when she didn't seem ready to accept me. I had poured so much into trying to be a good stepfather, and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. As I kept reading, it became even clearer. She was telling me that she didn't need me anymore. Her fiance, according to her, would provide for her, and he wouldn't control her the way I did. Her final line was, "I don't need anything from you," she said. "You can watch the wedding through a live stream." That was it. I felt like I had been slapped in the face. All of my efforts, my sacrifices, and my love, completely dismissed in a few cold lines. I was left staring at the screen, struggling to understand how everything had gone so wrong. How could she feel this way? How could she hold onto such deep resentment after everything I had done for her? I had tried so hard to be the father she didn't have, and now it seemed like none of it mattered. I didn't know what to do next, but I couldn't just ignore it. I had to talk to her mother, Victoria. Even though I knew this wasn't going to be easy, I showed her the email, and she was just as upset as I was. She called our daughter immediately, trying to understand why she would make such a decision, why she would push me away like this on such an important day. But when she picked up the phone, she didn't back down. She stood firm in her decision and refused to change her mind. At that moment, I realized I had to respect her wishes. As painful as it was, I decided not to go to the wedding. I wasn't going to cause a scene, and I wasn't going to beg her to accept me. She had made her choice, and I had to accept that. It didn't make it any easier, though. The thought of missing out on one of the biggest moments in her life, a day I had hoped to be a part of, was crushing. But what else could I do? I couldn't force her to accept me, and I wasn't about to beg for a place in her life. I decided to step back, respect her decision, and quietly stay away. Even though the pain was sharp, I didn't let it show. I couldn't act impulsively, as much as I wanted to. I knew that the right thing wasn't to lash out or cause a scene. I wasn't going to make her wedding day about me. So I decided to take a step back quietly and show her the consequences of her actions without saying a word. I didn't cancel the financial contributions I'd already made. That would have been a dramatic move, and it wasn't necessary. The money had already been spent, and I didn't need to make a spectacle of it. But what I could do was subtle, quietly withdrawing my support in a way that wouldn't be obvious right away. I withdrew my signature from the couple's home loan. It wasn't something I'd done lightly, but after everything I couldn't, in good conscience, continue to back them financially when she had made it clear that she didn't want me involved in her life anymore. It was a quiet move, and I made sure no one would notice it immediately. The fiance wouldn't realize the withdrawal until later, after the wedding. I also canceled the car payment, the one I had planned to surprise them with. But with her actions, I felt like I no longer had a place in her life, and I couldn't continue with that gesture. It was hard, especially since I had already made the payment, but I knew it was the right call. The wedding went ahead without me. Victoria noticed the absence of the car eventually, but she didn't ask any questions. She had to know why I didn't bring it, but we never talked about it. I didn't want to add more fuel to the fire, and neither did she. I made the decision that my stepdaughter was no longer welcome in my house. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I was resolute. I couldn't pretend to be a father when she didn't see me as one. I didn't want her to feel like she could walk in and out of my life at her convenience. A month went by, and things changed in ways I hadn't anticipated. The couple, now married, began facing financial difficulties that were directly tied to the things I had done for them. There were payments I'd covered, bills I'd paid, and things I'd co-signed that were left unfinished. Without my full backing of my help, they were left scrambling. It was tough for them, but it wasn't my problem anymore. That's when my stepdaughter swallowed her pride and tried to reconnect. First, it was through Victoria, who came to me with her daughter's message. "She wants to talk," Victoria said, trying to soften the blow. I stopped her right there and made it clear to Victoria that I wouldn't entertain this. She couldn't defend her daughter, and I wasn't about to let her. Victoria tried again. She went behind my back, thinking maybe I'd change my mind, but I had already blocked my stepdaughter's number. I wasn't going to be manipulated or pulled back into something that had already caused me too much pain. Then, one day, out of the blue, she showed up at my door. She was standing there, on the other side, asking for forgiveness. She begged for a chance to make things right. But my decision had already been made. I was firm. "Leave," I said, "and don't come back." I wasn't going to open that door again. She kept reaching out, though. Not directly, but through her husband's phone, sending message after message, asking for forgiveness, pleading for another chance. But I wasn't going to budge. The hurt was still fresh, and I wasn't ready to let go of what had happened. As I sit and reflect on everything that happened, the pain of being rejected by someone I treated as my own is still sharp. It's something I wasn't prepared for. I think about our relationship a lot. I wanted to be a father to her, even though I knew it wasn't my place. But she didn't want it, and that stings. I'm not saying I won't ever forgive her. That's the thing about forgiveness. It's not something you can force, and it's not something you give out of obligation. I may forgive her someday, but I'm not ready to do that just yet. Right now, I need the space to heal. The whole situation has made me think about family, sacrifice, rejection, and what forgiveness really means. Sometimes, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you give, you can't change someone's mind. You can't make someone see you the way you see them. But that's life, isn't it? Full of difficult choices, painful decisions, and moments of quiet reflection. I don't know what the future holds for me and her, but for now, I've made my peace with my decision.